This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, this is Jennifer Coffey in the Office of Research to Practice in the Office of Special Education Programs. And if you're listening to this webinar, hopefully you've listened to the first two informational webinars for the State Personnel Development Grant Program competition. And it's 84.323A is the CFDA. So welcome to the third webinar. And what I do in these webinars is I take questions I've received from states and I relay the answer to you as well. I want to make sure that all answers are publicly available. And this time I'm going to delve into what I'm looking at right now are the instructions or directions for this competition. And so what I'm looking at is the notice inviting applications section of it. And I just want to look at the three priorities and make sure that you understand what you need to connect to when you're writing your application in terms of the requirements within these three absolute priorities. So I am looking first at absolute priority 1, which is about effective and efficient delivery of professional development. And so this is, when we get to absolute priority 3, you'll see that this is also rolled up into absolute priority 3. So for all the work that you do, whether or not you're responding to absolute priority 3, this needs to be you need to be responsive to this in all your work. And so this means that you'd use evidence-based professional development practices. And we have described those in our rubric that is available to you. And I talked about that in the previous webinar, so I won't get into that too much. But the big idea is that you're thinking through selection, training, coaching your data system that helps you make decisions. You're thinking about administrative support, and you're thinking about changes you need to make in the system, so organizational supports and such. So those considerations in the professional development system you're either going to further develop or create should be true, in that because of those effective professional development practices you use, you should increase implementation of the innovation. So whatever the intervention or program, whatever it is you're supporting in your initiative or initiatives, you should increase implementation as a result of your professional development. If you have great training, coaching, all the things I just named, you would hope that those adults would improve in the use of the practices that you're focused on. Number 2 is that ongoing assistance piece, and that is making sure that you, after initial training, support is provided through coaching, through mentoring, through assessing fidelity, et cetera, whatever that happens to look like, that, there's no train and hope. It's always providing ongoing support and measuring to make sure that the skills are being used and that they're having an impact on child outcomes eventually. And then using technology to more efficiently and effectively provide ongoing professional development to personnel, including personnel in rural areas and other populations such as personnel in urban or high-need local educational agencies. And that those are defined in the notice if you want to look at those definitions. But so this is about thinking through what technology is going to help you reach people and reach them well and support them well. And so that could be in your coaching, that could be in the initial training, that could be in the fidelity checks, etc. So thinking through that. Absolute priority 2 is your state plan, or one aspect of that is your state plan. And in this is talking about assessing the needs in your state. And it talks about all the different partners you should be talking about, all the considerations about, the ESSA work, the juvenile justice work, the, transition to post-secondary, early childhood, all these considerations, and then you take those data and you determine where the SPDG can best meet needs, and then you're going to paint a picture of how you're going to meet those needs. So that's your state plan. But what I wanted to get into today is subsections A and B, because this is what I talked about with the state who was inquiring. So subsections A and B, you must choose at least one activities from subsection A, which is about professional development activities, and you must choose at least one activity from subsection B, which is called other activities, and we'll get to that in a second. So in professional development activities, you choose at least one of these areas, and you must put at least 90% of your funds toward the work from these areas. So professional, at least 90% of your funds need to go toward professional development. Now that can look a lot of different ways. Some of that is going to be planning for the professional development. There are personnel who need to do the work. There are resources that need to go into it. So you've got to think about professional development writ large, everything that goes into making these professional development activities happen. And so you can see a list under here, just to point out or give you some examples of what's included. So it talks about, here you see the first one starts with support in both special education and regular education teachers who teach children with disabilities. To provide teacher mentoring, team teaching, reduce class schedules and caseloads, and provide intensive professional development. So, it's pretty broad, but there are some more focused examples. Training special education and regular education teachers and administrators to effectively use and integrate technology. And then it talks about what that might look like. And knowledge of special education and regular teachers on the academic and developmental or functional needs of students with disabilities, instructional strategies. There are IEP areas in here. So take a look and see where, when you assess the need in your state, what in this area is going to help you meet that need. And you got to make that connection for the reviewers in your plan, in your application. So you're going to choose at least one area here. And then here's that subsection B, the other activities. And so you can spend up to 10% of your funds doing the work in this area, and you have to choose at least one area. So this is about reforming special education and regular education teacher certification or licensing requirements to ensure that they can meet the full range of needs of children with disabilities across disability categories, subject matter. You could work with your universities, you can work with districts on alternative routes, teacher advancement, so there's a list that you'll want to look through and get comfortable with and see what do you want to do in this area. You can choose more than one, but you must choose at least one, and you can use up to 10% of your funds on this area. With the contracts and subgrants, these are your required contracts or subgrants. So it talks about required partnerships above, and those are the people that you'll need to work with to determine what your SPDG can do to meet state needs, and potentially work with them, collaborate with them, align with them. But these are the contracts or subgrants that you must have in place, and you can determine what is the best option for you, a contract or a subgrant. So you must contract your subgrant with at least one LEA, at least one IHE, so it's a university, and a parent training and information center or a community parent resource center. Not every state has a community parent resource center, so it may very well be a PTI. You can contract your subgrant with as many family supporting groups as you want. This is just baseline. You must do this. And in addition, you can carry out other work. Just a reminder that we will have an OSEP parent program personnel on each of the review panels. I believe they're all going to be the OSEP parent program centers. It could be someone else who does the parent work or family engagement work, but I believe that's who it is. And they are going to be looking for, have you been very thoughtful in the contract of the subgrant? Is there going to be enough money going toward this family engagement work? Do you have objectives? Are you going to measure it? Because that shows you treasure it. So be really thoughtful about that work, as in all your work. But I do want to alert people to that. We take family engagement very serious in this SPDG. It is, Congress laid it out as part of the work, and we want people to be thoughtful in their applications and in their planning, because a thoughtful planning process and a thoughtful application is most likely going to lead to thoughtful and impactful work. So here's that not less than 90% of the funds for the professional development activities described in paragraph A, and not more than 10% of the funds for the other activities described in paragraph B. So APSO Priority 3, it's new. It is still confusing because we're just trying to figure out what it can look like. I've had some conversations about it, so that's why I'm bringing it to you. So it talks about, in the significance section, you're going to talk about what your personalized professional development activities are going to look like. How are you going to provide personnel choice in professional development options? And this is going to be designed to meet personnel. There's a description of who those personnel will be. It's quite broad. It's going to talk about how you can meet these personnel's personal needs. And there are some other requirements with that. So how are you going to choose those personnel? Are you going to prioritize certain groups of personnel who are serving children in rural areas, or personnel serving children from low-income households, or disadvantaged children with disabilities? So how are you going to select who's going to receive this support? How are they going to choose the professional development? It talks about having a list to choose from. If you can't fund everyone, how will you decide who to fund? And then how will you let people know? Will you have a wait list? So really thinking out what this is going to look like. Again, this is new. You're probably not already doing this. You also need to use evidence-based professional development methods. Again, that's that absolute priority 1 is wrapped up into this. So we talked about adult learning principles being used in the training. We talked about the coaching, that ongoing assistance, et cetera, et cetera. That's all. You have to ensure that that can happen for the work that's going to happen for absolute priority 3. So when the state asked, could this be the initiatives that we're already planning, and now we're just going to add a personalized option. So we're going to think about competencies people need to have in our training scope and sequence, and then people can choose which of the competencies, if they are certain, et cetera. And that is absolutely fine. And then a state asked, well, could we just create something entirely new? This is a separate thing. I said, yes. And there are all these requirements that you still need to meet. So do remember that. And you must say very clearly in your application that you are responding to absolute priority 3. That is a requirement as well, that you let us know. You let the peer reviewers know. Ongoing assistance, so coaching, mentoring, that kind of thing, that needs to be provided to the personnel who are engaging in the personalized professional development. And use technology as appropriate to be more efficient and effective. So how are the professional development providers going to use technology? And this might be in the coaching aspect, this might be in capturing the fidelity data, et cetera. And then also you're going to need to capture data on the impact it has on children, whatever the professional development is supporting. And there was a question, what if administrators are the ones who are able to select their professional development under this priority? And it's tougher to make that connection to the child outcomes. And I agree, it's a bit more distal, but it's still a requirement, and you're going to need to show how the skills that they're learning in their professional development will eventually lead to improved child outcomes, and maybe show trends over time, et cetera. You will have to think about that for your evaluation plan. All right, and that is it for today. So thank you again, and always do not hesitate to call me, 202-245-6673, or email me, jennifer.coffey@ed.gov. I am always available to answer your questions, and I appreciate your time on this. Thank you.